My parents skipped my MIT graduation to attend my sister's engagement party. That was the day I decided I was done being invisible. 5 years later, they saw me again. Just not as the daughter they abandoned, but as the woman who no longer needed them. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. My name is Haley Quinn, I'm 29 years old, and this is the story of how I learned that the quietest revenge is simply moving on without a sound. That morning, I zipped up a navy blue dress I didn't even like. It hung on me like a costume, something borrowed for a part one didn't audition for. The mirror in the hotel room reflected a woman who had built her life from the ashes of disappointment. 5 years ago, I'd been the kid desperate for her parents' approval. Now, I was just someone they hadn't earned the right to know. Outside, the city glowed in golden sunlight. Boston had that calm, late summer hum. People rushing, taxis honking, life moving forward. I had moved forward too, or at least that's what I told myself as I slipped into my heels and grabbed my clutch. The invitation had said, family only. I had laughed when I got it. Family. The word used to mean warmth, Sunday dinners, and birthday candles. But to me, it had turned into a scar, one that looked healed until someone touched it. My Aunt Linda had been the one to convince me to come. Please, Haley, she'd said on the phone, voice trembling. Your cousin's wedding wouldn't be the same without you. Aunt Linda. I sighed. They'll be there. I know, she said softly. But this isn't about them. It's about you showing them they don't get to erase you. So here I was, not for them, but for her. For the one person who never stopped sending birthday cards or checking if I'd eaten when I worked late. As I entered the grand ballroom, a rush of perfume and laughter hit me like static. Glittering chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, and a string quartet played something light and meaningless. The kind of perfection my mother always demanded. And then I saw them. My father, tall, sharp, his hair grayer now. My mother, elegant as ever, pearls resting perfectly against her neck. And my sister, Lydia, glowing under the lights, holding a new diamond on her finger, the golden girl as always. They hadn't noticed me yet. I stood at the edge of the crowd, invisible, a skill I had mastered growing up. But when my mother finally turned, our eyes met. Her expression froze mid-laugh. It was like she'd seen a ghost. Haley. Her lips formed silently across the room. I didn't move, didn't smile, just nodded once. Across the ballroom, my father's laughter faded, and Lydia's grip on her champagne glass tightened. For a moment, everything felt suspended. The music, the chatter, even the air. 5 years of silence, condensed into that single heartbeat. I stayed still, letting the weight of the moment sink in. They had created this ghost, and now they had to face it. Watching them from a distance, I realized something. They hadn't just skipped my graduation. They had forfeited their place in my story. They'd missed the moment their daughter crossed a stage at MIT, holding the diploma that symbolized every sacrifice she'd made, while they clinked glasses at Lydia's engagement party, smiling for photographs. That was the day I blocked their numbers.
No argumem, no cheers, no goodbye.
Just quiet, final, and absolute silence. Now, 5 years later, the silence was broken, not by words, but by presence. The ballroom smelled of roses and money. The kind of money that buys beauty, but not peace. The air was heavy with polite laughter and shallow compliments, the sound of people pretending to be perfect. I found a spot near the back and grabbed a flute of sparkling water, content to blend into the background again. But I wasn't the same girl who used to shrink when my mother corrected my tone or when my father ignored my achievements. I'd built something for myself, a life, a career, a name that didn't need their approval to mean something. Aunt Linda spotted me first. Haley, she gasped, pulling me into a hug. You look amazing, sweetheart. Her warmth was real, a small island of authenticity in a sea of performance. Your mom's been hoping to see you, she added softly. I raised an eyebrow. Has she? She's been regretful, Aunt Linda said, hesitating. I followed her gaze to the head table. My mother sat straight, posture perfect, face stiff. My father whispered something to Lydia, who laughed too loudly, just like she always did when she wanted attention. Same play, same actors, just older now. I'll be fine, I told Linda. Promise. But as I turned away, I felt a knot tighten in my chest. I thought I had buried the hurt, but being near them again made every scar pulse alive. Outside the ballroom windows, city lights shimmered against the glass. I stepped closer, my reflection merging with the skyline, two versions of myself staring back, the one who used to crave love and the one who finally stopped begging for it. Somewhere behind me, the music swelled, the applause grew louder. I took a sip of my drink and whispered to myself, "Let them play pretend. I'm done auditioning." That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about forgiveness or closure. This was about power. And for the first time, it was finally mine. I thought I could make it through the night without speaking to them. That was the plan: show up, look composed, leave early. But fate, as always, had a cruel sense of humor. Dinner was being served, and Aunt Linda had insisted I sit near her at one of the side tables. I was grateful until I noticed who was directly across the room, my parents and Lydia, surrounded by the usual admirers. The perfect family, laughing too loudly, smiling too wide, pretending like everything in their world was still golden. My fork felt heavy in my hand as I pushed food around my plate. Every time I looked up, I caught a glimpse of them. My mother's polished movements, my father's polite nods, Lydia's theatrical smiles. 5 years and nothing had changed. They still performed like their lives were a play, and the audience's applause was oxygen. "Do you miss them?" Aunt Linda whispered gently beside me. I paused.
Did I?
The truth was complicated. I didn't miss them. I missed the idea of them. The family I thought I had before I realized love had to be earned in their world. I used to, I admitted softly. But I think I outgrew that. Linda nodded with a small, sad smile. "You were always the strong one, Haley. You just didn't know it then." Her words sat with me. I wanted to believe them. But strength felt hollow when it came from surviving your own parents. After dinner, people drifted toward the dance floor. Soft jazz filled the air, champagne sparkled, and laughter carried across the ballroom like background noise in someone else's life. I stood near the back, sipping water, trying to appear unaffected. But my hands trembled slightly. That's when I heard it, my name.
Soft. Hesitant.
"Haley." I turned slowly. My father stood a few feet away, his expression careful, almost rehearsed. The years had softened him. The lines on his face were deeper, the confidence dimmed. For the first time, he looked small. "Dad," I said flatly. The word felt foreign on my tongue. He took a slow breath. 5 years. That's how long it's been. Longer, I replied. 5 years and 3 months, to be exact. He tried a small smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You look good. Grown up. Successful, I hear." I stared at him for a long second. I had to be. He shifted awkwardly, glancing around as if looking for my mother to rescue him. "Your mom, she's been wanting to talk to you too. We thought you needed space." I laughed quietly, a sharp, humorless sound.
No.
"You needed attention. You got it from Lydia. Remember?" His shoulders stiffened. "That's not fair." Neither was being the daughter who celebrated her biggest achievement alone. For a moment, he didn't speak. His lips parted, then closed again. Maybe he wanted to apologize. Maybe he just didn't know how. Either way, the silence between us said everything. Behind him, I caught sight of my mother standing by the table, watching us. Her face unreadable, her pearls gleaming under the lights like armor. Lydia stood beside her, eyes wide, whispering something I couldn't hear. "I'm not here for you," I said finally, steady and quiet. "I came for Aunt Linda. That's all." My father's mouth tightened. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Haley. Things just happened. Lydia's engagement was important too, right?" I said. "Important enough to skip my graduation." "I get it. You made your choice. I made mine." I turned to leave, but his next words stopped me. "We were proud of you, you know. We just didn't know how to show it." I froze. My throat felt tight. 5 years, and that was all he had? An apology shaped like an excuse? I faced him one last time. Pride isn't something you whisper when no one's around, Dad. It's something you show up for. His eyes dropped, and for the first time I saw guilt there. Real guilt. But it was too late for that to matter. I walked away before he could answer, stepping out onto the terrace. The night air hit me like a wave, cool, sharp, honest. The city lights stretched out beyond the glass railing, glittering against the black sky. I leaned forward, breathing in the quiet. It was strange, standing there knowing I didn't need their approval anymore. 5 years ago, I would have done anything for it. Now I was just grateful to feel indifferent. Still avoiding the crowd? A voice said behind me. I turned to see Lydia. She looked flawless, as always, blonde curls, perfect dress, that effortless glow she wore like a crown. But up close, I noticed something new. Exhaustion. The kind that no amount of makeup could hide. You showed up, she said, half smiling. Apparently, I replied. Mom didn't think you would. I almost didn't. She hesitated. I didn't mean for you to be hurt that day. The engagement, it just happened to fall on the same weekend. I looked at her carefully. You didn't mean for it to hurt, but you didn't care enough to stop it either. Her eyes dropped. I thought you'd understand. You were always the strong one, Haley. I almost laughed. The irony was too heavy to ignore. Strong? Strength wasn't a gift. It was what grew in the cracks they left behind. She fidgeted with her ring. Mom talks about you sometimes. She says she regrets how things turned out. Does she? I said. Or does she regret that I stopped chasing her approval? For a moment, Lydia didn't answer. The silence stretched thin between us, filled with years of unspoken things. I didn't come here to fight, I said finally. I came because Aunt Linda asked. That's all. Lydia nodded slowly. Still the loyal one, she whispered. As she turned to leave, she looked back once. You know, Mom cried when your name came up last week. I looked past her, at the glowing city beyond the terrace. Then she'll survive, crying a little more. Lydia left quietly, her heels clicking against the marble. I stood alone under the cold night sky, feeling lighter somehow, like every word I hadn't said had finally been spoken. The night wasn't over yet, but I knew one thing for sure. The real reckoning hadn't even started. I don't remember when I slipped away from the ballroom. One moment, my aunt was introducing me to her bridge club friends, and the next, I was outside again, standing on the stone terrace, watching my own breath fog in the cold night air. Inside, the music thumped softly through the walls. Laughter, clinking glasses, the steady hum of a family I used to belong to. For years, I told myself I didn't need closure, that I was done needing them. But seeing them again, Mom, Dad, Emily, it felt like a wound I had stitched shut was quietly bleeding again. I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself when I heard it. Haley. The voice came from behind me. Deep, slightly shaky. My father. I turned slowly. He stood near the doorway, his suit jacket open, tie loosened, hair thinner than I remembered. His face was older, but his eyes were still the same calculating gray. 5 years, I said quietly. That's how long it took you to say my name again. He tried to smile. We thought you needed space. I let out a laugh that didn't sound like mine.
No, Dad.
You needed attention. There's a difference. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt? Maybe. But it disappeared fast. Your mother wanted to come to your graduation, Haley. You know how things got complicated with your sister's engagement. I turned toward the railing, gripping the cold metal. Complicated? You mean when you told me you couldn't make it because the photographer for Emily's engagement photos was only available that day? He looked down, silent. I was the first person in our family to ever graduate from MIT, I said. And you skipped it to throw rose petals in front of a guy Emily dated for 6 months. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. For the first time, he didn't have an answer. Then, almost defensively, he muttered, You've always been dramatic. I turned back to him.
No, Dad.
I've always been forgotten. He didn't respond. just shoved his hands in his pockets and stared past me toward the garden lights. When he finally spoke again, his tone softened. Your mom misses you. I almost smiled at that. Does she? Because the last time we spoke, she told me I was selfish for not supporting Emily enough. She didn't mean that, he said quietly. She did, I said. And maybe she was right. Because that night I stopped trying. I stopped chasing your approval. I stopped pretending that being your daughter meant anything. The silence between us stretched long. The cold bit into my hands, but I didn't move. I wanted him to feel it, the weight of those 5 years, the distance that couldn't be undone with one awkward apology. Finally, I said, You didn't just skip a ceremony, Dad. You skipped me. He looked up at me, startled, but I was already walking away. Back inside, the ballroom glittered like nothing had happened. My cousin was on the dance floor with her new husband, spinning in her white dress, while everyone clapped and cheered. I stood near the back, the noise washing over me like static. And then I saw her, my mother, watching me from across the room. Our eyes met. For a long, tense moment, neither of us moved. Then she started walking toward me. Haley, she breathed, reaching out as if I might vanish. You look beautiful. I nodded slightly. So do you. I've missed you, she said, her voice trembling. You have no idea how hard it's been. Hard for you? I asked quietly. You still had Emily. You still had the parties, the dinners, the perfect family photos. What exactly did you miss? Her lips trembled, but she didn't answer. I know you think I hate you, I said softly, but I don't. I just learned to live without needing you. Her eyes glistened. We made a mistake, Haley. A terrible one. But your sister always needed to come first. I finished for her. I know. That's been the rule since we were kids. Please, she whispered, touching my arm. Can't we start over? For a moment, I almost wanted to say yes. But then I saw Emily over her shoulder, laughing, perfect, adored as ever. And I remembered the empty chair at my graduation. The way my classmates' parents had screamed their names while mine didn't even show up. I stepped back. You can start over, I said quietly. I already did. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there with tears gathering in her eyes and the band striking up another song. That night, when I got back to my hotel room, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. 5 years ago, I had erased them completely. But now, they had seen what they lost. Not through words, but through silence. And maybe that was the real revenge. Because forgiveness wasn't something they deserved, it was something I gave myself. I opened my laptop, checked my calendar, and smiled faintly. Tomorrow, I had a panel interview at MIT, this time not as a graduate but as a guest speaker. For the first time in years, the future felt like mine again. I didn't sleep much that night. The glow of the city lights outside my hotel window kept me awake, but it wasn't just that. It was the feeling, the strange, hollow ache that comes after seeing ghosts you thought you'd buried. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Haley, it's Emily.
Can we talk?
Please. For a long moment, I just stared at it. 5 years of silence. And now she wanted to talk. I almost deleted it. But something in me, curiosity, maybe made me reply. Tomorrow morning. Cafe across from the hotel. 9 a.m. I didn't know her anything, but I wanted to see if she'd show up. The next morning, the sky was gray and heavy with clouds. I arrived early, sitting by the window with a cup of black coffee I didn't touch. The doorbell jingled a few minutes later, and there she was. Emily. She looked the same, perfect hair, designer coat, polished nails. But her eyes were different. Tired. Guarded. She spotted me immediately and hesitated before walking over. Hey, she said quietly. I nodded. You found me. She sat across from me, clutching her latte like it was a shield. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The noise of the cafe filled the space between us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the hum of conversation. Then she said, You look different. 5 years will do that, I replied. She nodded, tracing her finger along the edge of her cup. I saw you last night. You looked happy. I almost laughed. Happy? I was surviving. Her eyes flicked up. Haley, I didn't know Mom and Dad weren't going to your graduation.
I swear.
They told me it was rescheduled or something. I didn't find out until afterward. I raised an eyebrow. You were posing for engagement photos that same weekend. You didn't think it was strange I wasn't there? She swallowed. I thought you were busy. You always were. I leaned back. That's convenient. Her face twisted slightly, the guilt starting to crack through her practiced calm. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I wanted to make everyone happy. Mom said you'd understand. Understand, I repeated. That my parents chose your engagement over my life's biggest moment? That they didn't even call me after? She looked down. I'm sorry. It was simple, but hollow, like a word she'd rehearsed, not one she truly meant. I stared at her for a long moment. Do you know what it feels like to stand on that stage, holding your degree, while everyone around you has their family screaming their names? To look into the crowd and realize no one came for you. Her eyes shimmered. Haley, I cut her off. You don't. You never had to. I could see the tears gathering, but I didn't stop. I needed her to hear this, not out of cruelty, but because it was the only truth I had left. For years, I tried to earn their love. Straight A's, scholarships, internships, none of it mattered. But one dinner, one dress, one ring on your finger, and suddenly, you were everything they ever wanted. So, I let them have you. Emily looked like she wanted to reach across the table, but didn't. I didn't come to that wedding for them. I continued softly. I came to remind myself that I'm not the same girl they forgot. Haley, she whispered, you're still my sister. I looked at her then, really looked. The same eyes, same face, but the connection between us felt like an old photograph, faded, cracked, and too painful to touch. No, I said finally. You're their daughter. I'm just the one they left behind. The words hit her like a physical blow. She covered her mouth, and for the first time, I saw her cry. Not the fake, delicate tears from childhood tantrums, but real ones. The kind that come when you realize it's too late. I stood up, leaving a few bills on the table. I don't hate you, Emily, I said quietly. But I'll never let you make me invisible again. She looked up at me, voice shaking. Will you ever forgive us? I paused at the door, my hand on the frame. Maybe, I said, when you forgive yourself. Then I walked out. Outside, the rain had started to fall, slow, steady cleansing. I tilted my face upward, letting it hit my skin. It didn't feel like sadness anymore. It felt like release. For years, I'd imagined revenge as some grand, dramatic thing, confrontation, exposure, making them pay. But in that moment, I understood. Revenge wasn't about destruction. It was about freedom. And mine had just begun. It's strange how silence can be louder than words. For 5 years, silence had been my shield, my escape, my revenge. But after that morning with Emily, it felt different, lighter, somehow. Like I'd finally said everything that had been trapped inside me since that empty chair at my graduation. When I returned to my hotel room, I packed my things slowly. Every item folded neatly, carefully, like I was closing a chapter that had been bleeding for too long. My flight back to Boston was in 3 hours. But before I left, I took one last look at the ballroom from the night before. The flowers were being cleared out, the decorations dismantled, the perfection gone. Just like the illusion of the family I used to chase. A week later, I stood in front of a glass building at MIT, the morning sunlight spilling across the courtyard. The university had invited me to speak at a panel titled, Women in Innovation. When the email had first arrived, I almost declined. I wasn't ready to stand on that stage again, the one that had once broken my heart.
But now I wanted to.
Not for validation. Not for them. But for me. As I adjusted the microphone and looked at the sea of young faces staring back at me, I felt the lump in my throat soften into pride. I'm Haley Quinn, I began. And 5 years ago, I thought success was about being seen, about earning the approval of people who never really saw me. I paused, scanning the audience. But what I've learned is this: the people who don't show up for you don't define your worth. You do. A ripple of nods spread through the room. Someone in the front row even wiped away a tear. And for the first time, I wasn't speaking to fill silence. I was speaking to inspire it. After the session, a few students came up to talk, eager, curious, hopeful. One of them, a girl barely 20, said, "My parents wanted me to quit engineering because it's not for girls. But hearing you made me want to stay." Her words hit me harder than I expected. I smiled. "Then stay," I said. "And one day, they'll see who you are, even if you don't need them to anymore." She grinned, and I saw a version of myself in her. The girl who used to chase approval and applause. The girl who had to learn the hard way that sometimes the best revenge isn't proving them wrong, it's proving yourself right. That night, after the event, I sat alone in my apartment. The city lights blinked outside, familiar and calm. I poured a glass of wine and opened my laptop to check emails. There it was, a message from my mother. The subject line read simply, "We're proud of you."
I stared at it for a long time. I didn't open it.
I didn't need to. Somewhere deep down, I knew what it said: apologies, regrets, maybe excuses. But none of that mattered anymore, because the girl who once needed their pride had grown into a woman who didn't. I closed the laptop and let the quiet fill the room. A few weeks later, my aunt, the one who had begged me to come to the wedding, called me. "Haley," she said softly, "your parents, they've been talking about you nonstop. Your mother cried after watching your panel online. She said she finally realized what she missed."
I didn't know what to say, so I said the only thing that felt right.
"I hope she learns to live with that." There was a pause. "Will you ever talk to them again?" I looked out the window at the city skyline, glowing and alive. "Maybe someday," I said, "but not today." And that was the truth. Because revenge wasn't about punishing them, it was about letting go of who I was when they hurt me. And I had finally done that. Months later, on a quiet Sunday morning, I visited the park near the Charles River, the same place I used to sit when I was an MIT student, dreaming of a future I wasn't sure I could reach. I sat on a bench, coffee in hand, and watched the water ripple in the sunlight. Families passed by, parents holding hands with children, laughter echoing through the air. It didn't sting anymore. It just felt distant. I smiled, a small, honest smile. 5 years ago, they had skipped my graduation to celebrate someone else's milestone. But in the end, the life I built, the peace I found, was something no celebration could ever match. I wasn't invisible anymore. I was free. That night, before bed, I wrote a single sentence in my journal, something I hadn't done in years. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's the moment you realize you've already won. And with that, I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and let the quiet, my oldest friend, hold me one last time.